48 children are among the thousands still trapped in the city of Bakhmut as war rages all around them. Officials say they are urging everyone to get out, but some are in areas that are no longer accessible.
Yeah, CNN's Alex Marquardt is in eastern Ukraine this morning. So give us a sense, what is the reality there in and around Bakhmut at this hour?
Well, tens of thousands of residents have left Bakhmut, but it is just extraordinary to think there are still that many civilians in the city. That city has just been pulverized. It is the site of the fiercest fighting in the country, according to President Zelensky and top military commanders. Ukrainian forces appear to be on their heels as Russian forces press forward. There has been no decision whether to pull back by the Ukrainians, whether to surrender the city, according to a military spokesman in this part of the country. But the Russians do appear to be trying to encircle the city. They have taken some areas north of Bakhmut. Those forces have been primarily made up of those Wagner mercenaries and convicts for the past few months leading that fight. They've been backed up by regular Russian forces. Now, the Ukrainians say that these are the top Wagner fighters that are leading this push. Now, we did hear from a Ukrainian soldier in Bakhmut yesterday who said, despite the dire picture that is being painted by Ukrainian officials, the actual situation is 100% worse. So Ukraine trying to hold on as their defensive positions get pummeled. If Russia were to take the city, it would be a significant victory. As you know, we've been talking about this fight for Bakhmut for months now. It would be a boost for Russia, a real blow for Ukraine. Both sides have lost thousands of men. It would give Russia another foothold here in the Donbass, in eastern Ukraine. But Ukraine will try to make that as much of a symbolic victory as they can rather than a strategic victory. If Russia were to push them out, Ukraine would dig in just to the west of the city. And at this point in this very bloody fighting, they are trying to weaken the Russian forces as much as possible so that even if they did take the city, that they wouldn't be in any kind of condition to press forward after that. But the fight is still very much ongoing. Russians trying to stand their ground. Jim and Erica.
Alex Marquardt, thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss, retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons. Good to have you on, sir. Thanks for taking the time this morning.
Hey, Jim. Great to be with you.
You've been watching this battlefield very closely. Ukrainian officials say they have not yet made a decision to pull back from Bakhmut. They're clearly placing a lot of importance on this. There is a view that there might be room here for strategic retreat, as it were. What's your view? Should they hold that ground? Is it worth the price they're paying?
Well, there's not a lot of Sun Tzu taking place, and that is evade when the enemy is strong. And Ukraine has got to take a hard look at that because they cannot afford to lose young men and women in this fight, given the fact that they're going to have to be deployed someplace else. Bakhmut does not hold any strategic value on the ground, really, and they have to recognize that and understand that their forces are better used elsewhere at this point. And it's a hard decision likely to take. And it would not necessarily mean retreat or a loss and let Russia do what it wants with it. But it's a more of evade when this enemy is strong. With Wagner there, they have a lot more of that firepower.
We are back once again in a space we've been many times since the start of this war more than a year ago. And that is a new weapon system is going in, a capable one. In this case, tanks such as the Leopards and soon U.S.-made Abrams tanks. But the focus is already on another weapon system, this one, the F-16, which U.S. officials have said consistently since the beginning of the war, frankly, that that's not the weapon that Ukrainian forces really need right now. And I wonder, do you agree with that assessment, or should the U.S. and its partners send them in?
No, I do agree with that. I think applying F-16s to the battlefield right now immediately, first of all, just couldn't happen. It would take 9 months to a year to train Ukrainian pilots to fly them and to coordinate a combined arms battlefield with tanks and communication systems and infantry on the ground would be very difficult. The F-16s, though, give Ukraine attack capability inside of Russia. You know, in this war of attrition right now, the side that wins attacks the other side's capability to wage war. Right now, Ukraine doesn't have that capability. Russia does. Russia is inside Ukraine and is attacking their infrastructure. So the F-16s, while they might solve a problem in the short term, if they're there right now, they're just not going to get there on time. And I just don't believe they're going to have any impact on the battlefield.
I want to ask you about NATO expansion. Last June, we were in Madrid as NATO announced the accession or their support, unanimous support of both Finland and Sweden joining. Since then, Turkey has again stood in the way, Turkey and Hungary, of Sweden's accession. Finland now is prepared to take steps forward. Do you think it is smart to split the two, in effect, start with Finland, possibly move on to Sweden if the Turkish and the Hungarians end up allowing that to happen, or is it better for them to go together? And what's the risk for the alliance in the meantime?
No, I think it's better for them to go together. NATO's got to be strong here. The Turks have a number. Whatever that number is that they want concessions in order for this to happen, to make it happen. That's the downside of the alliance, and the fact that each NATO country has to approve acceptance into it. I was never one for bringing actually a lot of those NATO countries that are close to Russia into NATO in the past, because we can't have membership to NATO to be everybody but Russia in Europe, because that creates the same problem we had during the First World War, and that's really what one of Russia's sticking points to be. But now the situation has changed on the ground. I think that both of them need to go in at the same time. The alliance has got to be strong, and then eventually, now I could even see go 5 years down the road, if once there's a peace settlement, that Ukraine does get more security assurances from NATO eventually, and maybe eventually 10 years is in the alliance itself.
Major Mike Lyons, thanks so much.
Thanks.